Well, hello everyone. Welcome to season 2 of our Formula G competition. And Calamity, it's going to be quite an interesting season. A few big changes. Probably the biggest two is we got two new teams. Besides that, some small route changes and whatnot. But yeah, you're happy to see this format come back again for a second season.
Yeah, for sure. As we've talked about previously, I was a bit burned out now from Reddit League, but I'm now looking forward to playing another tournament again. And Formula G is a bit more relaxed than Reddit League in that sense. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It also just doesn't require as much practice. And yeah, you said it. We've got two new teams, but even apart from that, we've got a lot of new competitors, some very strong players with us. So it might be well. It depends. It might be even closer than last season because everyone's doing so well, or some people might just stomp the competition. We'll see.
Yeah, we had a kind of a surprise winner last season in Close 24/7 who kind of took first place and kept it the entire season. So we can kind of see if something like that happens here as well. Yeah, so before we get to the teams and the calendar, let's first just briefly go over all the rules for this competition. There are two races every week. The feature race is on a countrywide map of a host country with difficulty 2, which basically means moving is allowed. The top 10 drivers get points towards their total standing. A bonus of 5 points is awarded for the fastest 25K. The race typically starts on a Friday or Saturday morning is when the seed is released, and drivers don't have a full week, only until Wednesday, to complete the races. That gives the organizers a time to set everything up and get them ready for the next week after that. Because there's also a sprint race, which is in a host city located in the same country as the feature race. The drivers start in reverse order from their placement in the previous feature race, and points are awarded the same way they are awarded for the feature race for that. So how the points all work out is like this. The top place getting 25 points and incrementally going down to only 1 point in 10th. This is not exactly like the actual Formula 1 Calamity, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
Yeah, but it is similar and based on that system overall for that one. Yeah, so really interesting format. The amount of time on each map is varied. It's usually somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes, but everybody has the same amount of time. There is not like in Reddit League, for so to speak, where the higher divisions have a shorter time and the lower drivers have more time, except for the sprint race, of course, where the better drivers get less time and the worst drivers from the previous race have more time to complete the round, which really shakes things up and makes sure everybody has some points and can kind of have a shot at earning some title chances here for their team. For that, yeah, and I guess the other thing is there are two competitions. Calamity, you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, players will be taking part in this competition in teams of two. For the normal championship rankings, that won't necessarily matter. If you just want to focus on that, you don't really need your teammate. But for the constructor standings, yours and your teammates' points will be combined, and then whoever wins the constructors championship, well, has the best team. And well, that mostly plays a part in how next season seeds then get assigned, etc. And well, obviously for the honor of being the constructors championship, which some teams do value, especially in real Formula One, value more than the single driver championship.
Oh yeah, so let's take a look at those teams. There are 12 of them. We're going to go through them all and briefly talk about the drivers in each one, and then we'll take a look at the field in general and make some predictions about them. Our first team is Lancaster PR. It is based in the UK, I believe. It's been a while.
Yeah,
It should be, right? In the UK. Both of these players actually are returning on the same team. Wakelock was a reserve driver who got promoted to the team. And no, Simi was not on this team last season. Never mind. So Wakelock keeps his seat. Simi moves as a driver who was in Formula G last season, moves to this team. Pretty much making it pretty strong for that one. But any comments on this team matchup?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think Simi stayed a bit below his expectations last season. He still did relatively well. He was in that top pack that fought for the championship win, but he eventually ended up at the bottom of that pack in 7th place, which I guess is below his expectations. But I also assume he didn't practice too much. But at the same time, yeah, I think he'll probably expect to finish a bit higher up this season, although we do have a very strong field this season, so I don't think it's going to be easy for him. And yeah, Wikolok, as you said, came in as a reserve driver and did a pretty decent job. Finished in 13th, and yeah, got 78 points, even though he, didn't have a whole season to gather them. I think he came in with the third race, I think it was. Something
Yeah,
like
third
that.
or fourth race. And he did pick up a podium finish in that, so not too bad at all for him there. So looking forward to seeing how this team can handle themselves this season. Our next team is Chariot Motor Group. Barry Fishy Bear keeping the seat. This was my team last season. But the new driver in Moist Flubber is joining him for this one, Calamity.
Yeah, I've mostly seen Moist Flubber from Discord. Basically, seen his face. I haven't really taken part in any competitions that involved him so far. But he did a very strong job in the preseason, where he finished second, above some very strong other players. So he's definitely not to be underestimated, and we'll have to see what he can offer. And yeah, Berry Fishy Bear last season, pretty solid job, nothing outstanding. He often had those like one outstanding race, and then he went back into sort of the middle of the pack, which
Yeah.
eventually made him finish ninth in the table. But yeah, I don't have an overview of how many wins or podiums he got, but just from memory, I think he was very much up and down throughout the season.
Yeah, definitely. He had a couple podiums, but just some weeks he showed up, and some weeks were a bit more difficult for him to finish overall. The next team is Bamberg Sport, and I believe this is a German-based team. Jack ES keeps his seat, and Slovak Goli moves from Opava over to this team. So yeah, it should be a pretty interesting team. Both of these drivers returning, Calamity.
Yeah, Slovak goalie had a bit of a rough season last time around. He eventually finished 17th with 18 points. And I'm sure he can do better than that. But yeah, again, like I said with Simi, the field has gotten even stronger. So it'll be hard to get more points than he did last season for all of the returning drivers. And yeah, Jack did very well last season, finished just 5 points, I think it was, behind Closed in second in the championship. And yeah, we'll see if he can do the same again and challenge for that title. I think this is probably one of the more unbalanced teams. But yeah, we can see if Slovak goalie can prove me wrong here and put up a good result as well to help Jack challenge for the Constructors' Championship with Bamberg.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next we've got FGT Racing based out of Scotland. This is your team, Calamity, and you are joined by a new teammate in Ein Arglu, a Division 1 player from Reddit League. Probably a very strong addition to the FGT team.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy about getting him. He finished third in the preseason. And yeah, I'm definitely hoping to, not only as a team, but as myself as well, to get a bit of a better season going than last year. I've only finished in 11th. Had some countries where I struggled a lot, but we'll talk about the maps later. This season's maps will favor me a lot more than last season's did. So I have high hopes, and my target's going to be at least to finish better than last season. So top 10 spot is definitely my goal, and I'm expecting the same of Anaglu. And I hope that, well, after last season's, I think it was ninth place in the Constructors' Championship, I'm hoping that we can at least challenge for the top half.
Indeed. Well, our next team is Nordhagen GP, based out of Norway. It is Max FI returning in his role as the driver, and Boxa, our finalist from Reddit League in Division 1 here, joins him as a new driver as well. So a very, very strong team for Nordhagen this season, Calamity.
Yeah, a very scary team. Max, very good results last season as well. Finished fifth. Was in that same group that I talked about earlier of the 7 drivers fighting for the championship. And eventually he just finished 7 points off third place. No, 3 points off third place. Sorry, looked at the wrong line. So very close to even a better position there. And yeah, you mentioned it, Boxer finalist from Reddit League, completely dominated the preseason qualifying. So I'd be surprised if he's not up there fighting for the championship as well. Although we'll have to see, because as we've talked about before, mostly in the last season, it is quite a different format if you've got this much time.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have to see if that is something that just doesn't matter for Box at all, and he'll still, you know, dominate everyone else regardless of that, or if everyone else will now get the chance to also get a perfect score, and maybe Boxer will then have problems with people getting close up and pinpointing. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I'll have to think of some reasons that might make Boxer not win this.
Well, you never know. That's the interesting thing about a different format is players seem to be very strong in one format and then have a little bit of a weaker time in others, and other people have a good chance to shine in those instead. Moving on to Scanturum, MRT is our next team based in Sweden, and they have decided to go with an all-French duo with Talampala and Orpheus, another very strong team. Calamity.
Yeah, and also the only team that basically reprised their roles from last season as the only team that have the same 2 drivers going into it. And they finished with a decent showing last season. Tolnpala coming in 3rd and Orpheus a bit further down in 10th, which was sort of another group. Like you had that one group, the top 7, then you had Giovanni sort of in the middle, and then you had another group of 4, which included Orpheus, me, Shumi, and Wakelock. Although actually, no, it started with Berry Fishy Bear, then Orpheus, me, and Shumi. Then it was a bit of a gap again. So yeah, both of them probably hoping to improve a bit on last season. And if they manage to do that, they'll probably be a strong challenger for the Constructors' Championship again as well.
Very nice. Moving on to our championship team from last season. Oberhausen Sport was the top team in the Constructors' Cup, as well as having the best driver in closed 24/7. Of course, keeps his seat with a new contract. And he is joined by M. the Baseman, another returning driver, making the move from Katsarivatsa over to Oberhausen. Calamity.
Yeah, and M. the Baseman wasn't too happy with his last season, only finished in 15th spot. So out of the drivers that, got a bit more than just a couple of points, he was basically the furthest down in the championship. And closed, as we said, our defending champion. He's going to have a tough time if he wants to defend that title, but I'm sure he's up for the challenge. And yeah, the Baseman surely will want to, prove to himself mostly that he can perform better than he did last season. And if he does, then, well, would you look at that? One more team that could fight for the Constructors' Championship,
Yeah,
as if
exactly.
as if we don't have enough yet.
Yeah, the field is very strong indeed this season. Well, then moving over to M. the Baseman's former team, Katsuravatsa, Mr. Blue GG keeps his seat in the team and is joined by your teammate from last season, M. Wickholm. Calamity.
Yeah, M. Wickholm last season with 16 points. It sort of looked like he was the weakest of the field. He certainly still did his best and tried to get as many points as he could every week, but 16 points after basically 20 different races. You're not going to challenge the Constructors' Championship with that. But for him, I'm sure his personal goal will just be to improve steadily and try and at least get as many points as last season. I've mentioned it a couple of times already. Much tougher field, and also because we've got 4 more people competing and no more point spots, it'll become even more difficult to get points. So I'm sure he won't be too disappointed if he can at least get as many points as last season. And Mr. Blue, we've seen some weaknesses from him towards the end of Reddit League, so we'll have to see if he can accomplish what he did last season in Formula G again and finish at least 4th, which, yeah, he was sort of between Tollenpal and Max there, just 2 points to 3rd, 1 point down to 5th. Yeah, it'll be a tough challenge, but it'll probably be a good competition to get his confidence back after the end of Reddit League didn't go too well for him.
Yeah, definitely. Something like the sprint race, where drivers who have a rough time in the feature race get more time than the other drivers who did well, are definitely a good chance for M. Wickholm and the other lower drivers to pick up some points and help their team in that Constructor Cup championship. Moving over to Octane Racing in the US, Steeless Nick keeps his seat after a pretty good season last season, and I get a shot at my first full season as a Formula G driver. I came in as a reserve driver towards the very end of the season, so I'm looking forward to having a full season under my belt and see what we can do, Calamity.
You say towards the very end of the season. I mean, I'm pretty sure you still competed in more than half of the season, but
No, I had. I mean, when did I actually come in? I thought it was only for like 3. I guess there's only 10 weeks.
I think you
so
came
in like
your scores started counting in week 3. But you
Well,
just
'cause I was
didn't
a
take a
reserve
lot of them very
driver,
seriously, so you didn't get any points there.
Yeah, it was like one of those things where the weeks I couldn't really practice and do well was like, oh, we need you to be the reserve driver this week. And I'm like, no, last week I did really well. This week I did horribly. Don't use my score. So, yeah, but I mean, I had my score count for maybe half the season, but actually officially as a driver was only the last 3 or 4 races or so for that. But yeah, we'll see how things go in this one for us here. Moving over to Opava, based in the Czech Republic, we've got Ordbaka and Shumi Obaloza. Shumi coming off a very strong season in Reddit League, and a new driver in Ordbaka joining him in this team.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this team, actually. As you said, Shumi, he dominated his division in Reddit League, and it sort of gives me a good impression on how it's going to be playing against him in Division 2 next season. This competition, and he didn't do too well in Formula G last season. He finished 12th, just behind me with 92 points, and I think he sort of had a similar way that the season went as Barry Fishy Bear did, with some very strong results and a lot of the times just sort of disappearing in the middle of the table. And Ordboka as well is a pretty strong player. He was he in, I think he was in Division 4 in Reddit League. And I don't remember if he got promoted or not, but he was far up there as well. So this could definitely be a dark horse that might challenge for the Constructors' Championship as well if things really go their way.
Okay. Well, now our final 2 teams are 2 of the new teams that have been added to our field this season, bringing our total up to 12. We have got Orient Racing, based in Japan, for this one, with Xander and Danny Blondes. Both of these drivers are new drivers, but Danny Blondes at least has competed in Reddit League, and Xander's been around a bit in a few competitions as well, Calamity.
Yeah, Xander, sort of the same thing goes for him that went for Moist Flubber, in that I've mostly just seen him on Discord several things and never really had him competing in anything against me. He did all right in preseason. He finished with 39 points in 7th place, so he wasn't too far down the list, and at least managed to qualify himself. I think all in all 8 people came through the new drivers qualifying, and he managed to just about get in there. And yeah, Danny Blonde, you said, it competed in Reddit League a bit further down in the divisions, and he did okay too. He played very strong on his home map in Italy. Overall, I think upper midfield in his division. And yeah, I think they're gonna have a tough time doing too much damage in this season. I'd look at them probably finishing somewhere at best 7th or 8th. But yeah, they're probably gonna use this as another opportunity to get some practice in against some really strong opponents and see where they stand, especially for Danny Blunt in Reddit League going forward, to see how he compares against some of the opponents he will have to face eventually in Reddit League if he gets promoted to some of the higher divisions.
Definitely. And our second new team is Cape Motorsports from South Africa. Labongreb, another Reddit League competitor, and Carp take these 2 seats, Calamity.
Yeah, and pretty much the same goes for those 2, where Labongreb played I think both Laban Greb and Danny Blondes were in Division 5. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yes, yeah.
I was sure about Laban Greb. I wasn't entirely sure about Danny Blondes. And Carp 8th in the preseason qualifying. So it's kind of very similar in that they were very close to each other, Laban Greb to Danny Blondes and Carp to Xander. But this team, just both of them slightly below the respective other in Orient Racing. So I'm probably expecting the story to be similar here, where this team is probably my favorite for last place, not because they're bad or anything. I still think they're pretty good players, but I just haven't seen that high of a ceiling for either of them yet. So we'll see if they can prove me wrong. But if I had to pick a team to finish last, I'd probably pick them.
Okay. Very nice. Well, let's take a look at the field all together with everybody on one page to make it a little bit easier for you all here. There we go. Closed our returning champion last season, Calamity, but lots of new faces, especially some strong competitors are joining the field here. Any predictions you're interested in making?
Yeah,
As we get into the first week here coming up soon.
It can definitely be very interesting. My personal favorites, as I'm going to talk about the teams first and kind of the drivers come out of that a bit, but personal favorite clearly as a team is Nordhagen with Max and Boxer. Also very strong competitors, Tollenpal and Orpheus with Skanström. I'm hoping that me and Einaglu can challenge them as well. Closed M the Basement could be up there, but it'll depend a bit on M the Basement's performances. And also, as I mentioned previously, as a dark horse, Opava with Shumi and Ordboka, I definitely expect to be up there as well. And maybe another bit of a dark horse, maybe Chariot with Barry Fishy Bear and Moist Flubber. As we said, Moist Flubber with very good performances in preseason, and Barry Fisher Bear can always show up at the top of rankings to get those big points. So if their season goes really well, I'd expect them to be up there too. And sort of for the bottom of the table, I mentioned it a bit already. Cape will struggle. Orient might struggle depending on how well they perform. Octane with you in it, that's always... I'm joking. But yeah, probably all of these teams that have one clear strong player and another player that's still good in pretty much all of the cases, but just can't perform to quite that standard. I'm talking about Octane, Casarivazza, Bamberg, all of those teams, maybe even Lancaster, although Wakerlock did do pretty well last season. All of those teams are sort of probably going to be fighting it out in the middle of the pack, not too big of a challenger for the title, but also shouldn't be having too many problems with the lower positions.
Oh, indeed, with that one. Yeah, I'm definitely thinking it's going to be really hard to call a top position here and see if Close can keep his title, given that kind of our predictions last season didn't come true at all. Close really shocked the field with how fast and how long he held that top position in the last season. With the new time difference, a lot of times some of the players, their biggest problem is that time limit. So when you give them 4 or 5 minutes, they have no problem getting close to 25K. They really start to shine for them, and they can move their way up the table. Other players, they've had a very exhausting Reddit League season. Many people are on vacation and playing this not as seriously as in other competitions that might be more valuable for them personally. So we're going to really have to see how this thing unfolds overall for them here.
Yeah, and just to quickly add on for the single driver standings, it's incredibly difficult to predict, not only because there's so many strong players here, but also because you can never really tell with a tournament like that, how seriously are these players going to take the tournament? Is it going to be a tournament where they're like, okay, I'll maybe practice a bit if I have the time, and then I'll see if I can do well? Is it going to be a tournament where they're like, I don't need to practice, I can just play and we'll see what happens? Or is it going to be a tournament where they're like, okay, I'm going to practice like 5 hours every week to get the best result possible? And that can really mix up the rankings. And as you said, with 5 minutes, pretty much most maps are going to be 25Kable if you've done the practice you needed. So it can really bring someone who you wouldn't necessarily expect to be at the top far up there if they put into practice. And as we saw last season as well, it can bring some very good players down if they don't put
Mhm.
into practice they would need, and then get surprised by one or two locations in the seed that they just didn't expect.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's finish up by taking a look at the calendar we have coming up for you here in season 2 in just a few days. Actually, already started. Get when this video will go up. Is our first week is in Argentina, followed by a return to France, South Korea, Italy again. Although we are in a new sprint city for Italy, Japan, Czechia, Norway, South Africa, Finland, and the UAE round out our schedule for this season. Only 2 countries returning, France and Italy. Everything else is new. Yeah, your thoughts on this calendar for season 2, Calamity?
Yeah, it's good that there are only 2 countries returning. It'd get boring if you're playing the same maps every season. Probably would have chosen 2 different countries if I had the choice to return, but well, we'll just have to deal with it. At least
Yeah.
France is interesting in the sense that if just 5 minutes often isn't enough in France if you get a really unlucky location. So at least if we get an interesting seed, that might split up the field a bit. And yeah, I don't want to play Italy, but well, we'll get over it somehow. And talking a
Yeah.
bit more about the new and interesting countries, starting off with Argentina, which is one of the more different, not different, difficult countries in GeoGuessr, because you do have lots of roads that just leave you in the middle of nowhere. And because the country is so big, but still in sort of the northern center of it, it's relatively densely populated. You can even get signs on a long highway that are like, okay, these 2 cities are 50 and 150 kilometers away, and you still have to zoom in pretty far because they just won't show up otherwise. So
Yeah.
Argentina probably, for different reasons, but can also very much lead to some differences in scores similar to France. South Korea is going to be super interesting. Um, for a bunch of different reasons. We probably, everyone who's a bit more experienced with GeoGuessr knows the problems with the South Korean map, which make it very hard to figure out what's going on. And there's also a lot of South Korea that just isn't really well signed. The good thing in quotation marks is that South Korea isn't actually that densely covered. Most of the coverage is around bigger cities. So at least there you've got a decent chance of finding a road sign that's going to give you either some city names or some road numbers. Then you just have to find them, which with the South Korean map isn't easy. Also, the coverage is in some places a bit messed up, and I don't know if Ben will really test the seas beforehand to see if it's all right. So we might have some ugly surprises in there as well. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think that might be, yeah, I think it might be the most difficult country out of the 10 that we've got here this season. Then we've already talked about Italy. I don't want to spend another word talking about that. Japan, very interesting. I'm looking forward to that. It's probably one of my stronger countries, and especially if we've got 5 minutes, there shouldn't really be
Yeah.
any location that you don't find unless you're on an island that pretty much has like 2 roads, and then you're stuck, and all of the 5 minutes that you got won't help you because you're not going to find
Just
more
drive around in
information.
circles.
Yep.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it's an interesting map. It's fun to play at least. Then we've got Czechia, which a pretty standard country in Europe, shouldn't be too out of the ordinary. Probably looking at similar results that we had in Austria last season, where most players will be very close to 25k, and at most it'll be coming down to maybe a highway location where it's difficult to pinpoint and people losing like 10 points. Then we're going over to Norway, which is going to be very interesting as well, because Norway does have a lot of very long, in this case, not straight roads, but still very long roads through forests or along fjords that just give you no information whatsoever. And sometimes this, especially in Norway, is one of the countries where it can really decide a lot depending on which direction you choose to go from the start. Because one
Yeah.
direction might have a sign after a minute, and the other one just has nothing. South Africa shouldn't be too difficult. South Africa is generally very well signed, and
Yeah.
no matter which direction you choose, unless we get a location that's like really out there, maybe in Kruger National Park or something like that, it shouldn't be too difficult for most, well, I say most, for quite a few people to get a perfect score there, especially because South Africa, being quite a big country, also gives you quite a bit of leeway on the perfect score in any given round. It'll just depend on, there are quite a few very long straight roads in South Africa too. So we'll see if any of those come in. But I think, at least, I've played map as South Africa map before. I think most of the locations there are pinpointable. So if that's the case, then we don't have to worry about that too much. Then we come to Finland, which is similar to Norway. The signage is a bit better, I think, though. Not necessarily in what's on the signs, but in how often you find them.
Yeah, I would say so.
The other problem is, the one that Norway doesn't have, is that Finland is a bit less intuitive with the way the roads are numbered. So while in Norway you can find roads pretty easily, in Finland that might take you a bit longer. And apart from that, it's also just, I think actually in terms of how the country looks, how densely populated it is, etc., it just plays a bit more like Sweden rather than Norway. But yeah, it could be an interesting country for sure as well, especially because on these forest roads, it's oftentimes quite difficult to pinpoint. So this might be another map that just has a lot of players similar to Czechia, close to 25k, but all just dropping 1 or 2 points here or there. So that definitely might be a chance for someone to get a surprise win in there, because he just gets a bit lucky on pinpointing. And then to finish it off, we have the UAE, which is probably maybe even the easiest country of the 10, maybe behind South Africa, to get a perfect score. Well, maybe not to get a perfect score, but to get your general locations, because it's very well signed usually, and the coverage is very limited, and the country isn't that big. The one thing is, I don't know the map. I don't know where the locations are placed. It can be very difficult to pinpoint on long stretches of roads again, because basically the whole middle of the country is just like free roads that traverse you from west of the country to the east of the country. And if you're anywhere alongside them, then you might struggle to get a perfect score.
Yeah, I mean, the one other challenge about the UAE is it is very small. So even a few meters off can cost you a few points. So pinpointing is really going to be important there. 2 Scandinavian countries, which usually are very well signed. Not going to be too bad for us, especially with that 5-minute time limit. I'm definitely looking forward to playing on a home map in Japan. My chance to try to get up those leaderboards at least 1 week and help my team out there for that one. Yeah. Yeah, love-hate relationship with France and Italy continues as we see them quite often in competitions. South Korea, of course, can be very interesting, very challenging to play, but very rewarding as well when you find it on the weird map that it has for that country. And Argentina, I just pray to God I'm not on a long stretch of highway in the middle of nowhere. Other than that, I'm pretty good. So yeah, definitely a good set of maps that will challenge our drivers in several different ways. And we are a very global map as well. So we are going to visit a couple corners of the world, at least for this one. Well, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed our little look at and a preview of the Season 2 of Formula G. Yeah, we're starting here in just a few days. And we're looking to see how these competitors do in this season. We got 2 new teams, lots of new drivers. So it should definitely be a good time. We're going to bring you as many casts as we can. Unlike Reddit League, we don't cast 1-to-1s, obviously, because this isn't a 1v1 matchup. We bring 5 rounds of the 5 best rounds that we can find from all the drivers that send us videos, and we put those together in a bit of a race montage for you. So you get to see a little bit, a glimpse of all the drivers throughout the season and how they do, and we'll give you updates on scores as we go along in those casts. You can kind of follow the action as it happens, so to speak. for that. And yeah, we'll see you all there. Take care.
Bye.